welcome back to Geeks and Grounds, a monthly game club and weekly podcast where we play games and brew good conversation together. I'm your host, Jenny Wyndham.
And I'm Joel Thomas.
And I'm ready to punch some fascists, shove them off a cliff.
Is so ready. I want my EVA unit that can plug into my spinal column, and I'm
legally distinct EVA unit.
Legally distinct EVA unit, and I'm ready to roll, man.
Nice. Yeah. Very excited to talk about this game, especially since I think you had a very different, or maybe we may not be totally aligned on opinions. I'm not entirely sure.
Excited to see.
Yeah. The game we are talking about is the third of our one-shots this month. Normally, we play a game a month. We have conversations about it as a community and in the podcast and in the newsletter. This month, just because it's summertime, things are busy. We thought, why not change it up, do a series of one-shots that not only have to do with just shorter playtimes and all of that good stuff, but they also celebrate pride in different ways. And what is more queer than fighting fascism? I don't know.
Literally nothing.
So I think that is what we're going to get into with Extreme Meatpunks Forever Season 1. I guess I should have clarified, we're doing Season 1. There is another season, which we'll talk about more as to like why that would be important to signal once we get into the deep dive. But before that, we are hopping into the pastry case, which is our grab bag of topics, including news from the industry, what we've been up to, and it's a little bit of both in this particular one because this is a special edition, our quarterly Steam NextFest recap. We have a lot of suggestions that came in through the Discord. Please, we will not have time to go through every single one of them. So if you're interested in seeing what the community has really been playing, what thoughts they had, both feedback as well as glowing reviews, go to the Discord. You can find that link at geeksandgrounds.com.
I mean, but, if there were ever an example of like, you lift me up so that I can stand on mountains, it is the community Steam NextFest recommendations this round, y'all. Great job.
Nice. Yes. Very happy that they were helpful to you. It turns out the tip of checking in midweek worked out great.
Game changer. Absolutely.
Perfect. So I was going to say, Joel, did you want to kick us off with your top three, or at least three that you'd like to highlight? Maybe not the top, but three that you thought were noteworthy.
Yeah, I think these three are coming to you hard and fast because I'm actually gonna lead off with one that I found because of the algorithm you all helped me build. So I went through on Wednesday. This is for casual participants. This is my recommendation. Check in on Wednesday. Download like a handful of games that everyone else is into that you want to try out, and then see what the algorithm recommends to you, because that's how I stumbled across my first rec, which is Mio Memories in Orbit. This is, if you were into like Ori and the Will-O-Wisps or the Ori games in general, it's that kind of like very floaty platformer, Metroidvania kind of thing. Yeah. Beautiful, like a lot of like line-based imagery. You're kind of this light from a constellation that's in the body of a cute little robot type thing. And you're flexing your hair. You're made of light around to like jump and grab onto things. I thought this game was gorgeous. The artistry was this kind of sketchy, almost like tattoo style that I thought was amazing.
Nice.
Felt satisfying to play. So in terms of just like my intro take, very much enjoyed. The next two came as recs from other folks in the community. So first one I'll highlight is Hell Is Us. Pixelated Soul recommended this one. This is not necessarily a typical play for me. Kind of the hyper-real graphics, but with like cartoonishly drawn people. So think like the hyper-realism of a Souls-like game, or like Spawn, as it kind of reminded me of, like grotesque, realistic imagery. And this game was so fascinating. You get very little guidance. You're just kind of openly exploring. You're having conversations with people. And as you learn things, there's like a neural net or something in the background that says like, oh, I learned this thing. So now when I have future conversations, I can reference this thing when I'm talking to other people.
Mm,
And that was like super, super
that's
fascinating.
neat.
Um, there's more to this. I only played for maybe like 30 minutes or so. So I know I didn't get into like the meat of the game, but if that sounds engaging, like a little darker, grittier, would recommend. And the last one felt like as I was playing, I was like, I'm playing a Geeks and Grounds game right now. That's how I felt playing it. It was called Vessels of Decay, and I'm not sure if it's Ado or Ado in our community that recommended it. ADO is how it's spelled. Um, Fantastic recommendation. Pixel art, top down look, dark fantasy, kind of grim look and feel, but also takes place clearly after some sort of modern world apocalypse. So you see like the
Mm,
broken down mall that's been taken over by vines or whatever.
mm-hmm.
Gameplay wise, it felt a lot like Hyper Light Drifter to me. So if you're into those types of games, I recommend like the little puzzle elements, the combat elements. Uh, those were my top three, but I do want to just give a quick shout out to other folks in the community that like helped me get through this. So Pixelated Soul, I think it's Shaloon or Shalune, More Coffee, Heart Plus, Kalist. Uh, yeah, I got it where I got because of all of you. Thank you so much for making some fantastic recommendations in the chat for us.
Awesome. Yeah, very good recommendations. There's a huge list. So again, if you want to check out more of them, definitely go to Discord.
Yeah. So how about you, Jenny? What were some of your top three?
Um, so the first one, I don't know if it's officially part of the Steam NextFest, but I found it as I was looking through demos, is Mushroom Masumi. This game is a sort of dark fairy tale where kind of Thumbelina like you raise this mushroom from a spore or a seed into a young woman, and the choices that you make in raising her impact how she turns out. And then that's sort of like the first half. The second half is you end up playing as her and you make these decisions as this mushroom exploring the world and making decisions. It's really, really cute pixel art, but not like an 8-bit or 16-bit. Is very illustrative pixel art. And there is an element that feels a little bit like almost like an RPG mixed with like a
Yeah.
card game where you are using these cards to pick and balance out her traits. And so you go through these narratives. They're very short, sort of story arcs. You can collect the mushrooms essentially, and it's just a really lovely experience. And it's kind of weird and different. And the demo is still out if you would like to give that a try. Um, yeah, it
Looks
gets pretty
amazing.
dark.
It looks like
Yeah.
that comes out this week, actually.
hmm
Incredible. Yeah, this looks awesome.
does. Yes. The other one that I played that was something I had never heard of before the Frosty Game Showcase. So shout out to the Frosty Game Showcase was a game called Finely Diced. This is a little bit of a blend of kind of a roguelite meets deck builder meets almost like dominoes, where you are matching and sort of putting your inventory together with ingredients to create dishes. And it's a cooking game, but it's more of a puzzle strategy kind of game. You're not like about it's not about the interactive like smells and the tangible act of cooking. It's about the strategy to make the dishes. So I would say if you're looking for like a true cooking game, this is not it. But if you want like a puzzle game, honestly think in the veins of a Balatro or in the veins of a
Oh,
yeah, like a just kind of those puzzly kind of games. This is that. Really just like hooky gameplay. You always want to just go one more round, and the goal is to sort of make these calculated risks to be able to prepare your dishes.
I
Really,
gotta
really fun.
say, I like obviously you have way more experience with different types of games than I have. I don't think I've ever seen a game that looks like this. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what to compare it to.
Yeah, it's got this really sort of interesting, it's all 2D. It almost looks sort of sparse in a way. You're like looking at windows, but at the same time, the pixel art of the food is really beautiful. But then the dice are kind of like in a little bit of a 3D space. It blends a lot. It's really cool.
Cool.
So definitely recommend that one. And then Benny Bash, which is for those of you who like a little bit of horror in your life. Um, This is very much, if anyone has played Inception or Inscription, it's kind of like got that sort of vibe where you are first person, you walk into a cabin, you're investigating it. There are clearly puzzles everywhere, sort of in all four directions that you can look, but the only thing you can really interact with is a game cartridge. You put it in, and this is very much also an homage to the sort of SNES Nintendo games of the past and Nintendo as in general. And all you do to start out is you play this game called Benny Bash, which is basically Mario, legally distinct Mario.
Legally distinct Mario.
And as you play, and your character, for example, falls off a cliff, because that's what happens in Mario. You fall and you die, or you hit a legally distinct Koopa and you die. The character of the game, Benny, is increasingly upset with you for not playing well. And so this game is about breaking the fourth wall. And I love this kind of game. There's sort of this jump scare element, but at the same time, I think there's a bit more underneath the surface. So yeah, it looks very good.
First person part of this, when you're not in the Benny part of the game, reminds me a lot of Signalis in the first person perspective. That kind of like almost PS1 look, gritty, dark realness. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very much like going for sort of, the gritty. Again, if you played like Inscription, it kind of looks like that. But yeah, PS1, PS2 horror sort of energy. And what's nice is when you're walking around, it's in first person perspective, but you're not moving in first person. It's very much like a cardinal direction. You click, it teleports you forward. So if you are typically not a first person player because of motion sickness, you may be able to play this as well.
Nice.
And I wanted to shout out a couple more, just like 5 more recommendations from people in the community. Since I didn't ask permission, I don't know if I should shout out the names. I don't know. So I'll just say go to Discord, because I was like, oh, maybe I should read out like what they said, but I just realized I didn't ask. So I will just say the games, and if you'd like, you can go into Discord and see like what specifically they said about each game. But I guess, do you want to go first and we can just switch off?
Yeah.
Just maybe read the Steam descriptions of each.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one is called Mind Wave. Make your way to the top of Mindscape Tower and delve into the minds of your opponents in a cerebral micro game frenzy. This almost looks like Invader Zim meets what's the arcade 52 for the game that had all the micro games in it that you were really into last year?
Maybe?
Yeah, the recent one. I can't remember.
Consume Me, probably.
I don't even know anymore.
Yeah,
yeah, it looks very, very interesting from Hollow Hammer Games.
And I think they recently had a Kickstarter. I don't know if it's still going on, but I'm pretty sure it funded within like the first 24 hours. So this is very successful Kickstarter.
Dang.
The next one I wanted to shout out from Community Rex was Town to City. I fortunately got to play this one. It is an idyllic town builder game. It's absolutely beautiful. It has this sort of voxel pixel art feel, and your purpose is pretty much in the title. You're going from a small town, trying to build it into a big city. As you increase your population, you get more items and cooler things to place and unlock, and it is beautiful. This is one where I think if you looked at the trailer and that visually this appeals to you, definitely hop in, because it's very easy to make stuff look beautiful in this game. So yeah.
Next one is Possessors with an S in a parentheses at the end. Escape a sprawling, flooded city overrun with surreal interdimensional horror in this fast-paced action side-scroller. From Heart Machine, I did play this one. I loved it. This almost made my top 3. I will say, like, for the demo, the movement was a little clunkier than I wanted, but I was like, I can absolutely see how when this gets to, like, final publisher state, like, this is going to be so smooth. The art style was already incredible. The story was gripping. It was really awesome. So excited to see this one get to the full release.
Yeah, super excited for this one. I've been very eagerly keeping an eye on this. The next one is Hiragami, which is a beautiful origami inspired game where everything in the world looks like paper and is folded like origami. And the description says, embark on a mystical journey to save your fragile home from deadly digital invaders. Take on animal forms to traverse the landscape, solve puzzles, overcome enemies, and save the realm. This just looks stunning.
Wow.
It's a really unique art style, really fun concept. So very excited for this one.
Yeah, this looks gorgeous. Like even
Mm-hmm.
like all of the assets look like they're made of origami, not just the characters. Like this is really
Mm-hmm.
incredible. Wow. Last one on the list, I believe, is the new Ninja Gaiden entry, Ragebound, a brand new side-scrolling entry to the Ninja Gaiden series from the team behind Blasphemous. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound redefines the classic platformer saga in a spectacular, thrilling, and challenging ninja adventure. I also did play this one. This game was super fun. So if you're into this like side-scrolling, platforming, Metroidvania kind of thing, I think you dig it. The art was
Mm-hmm.
cool. The story was interesting. Really enjoyed it.
Nice. And again, thank you to those who put those games in recommendations. I honestly just went through and picked a couple of them that really like stood out, but there were many, many more in there. So go check out the Discord if you would like. Most of these demos I have checked through. Looks like all of the demos that we've mentioned are still up. And most demos, it seems like from NextFest, seem to still be up, which is great because that means the developers and publishers are wisening up to the fact that people cannot play that many games in such a short amount of time, especially with most people working and having other things to do with their life besides play games. So I know I'm thankful because I was in Toronto for all of last week and did not have a chance to play most of the games that I downloaded. So very excited
People
about
are
that.
waiting for the Geeks and Grounds quarterly review. And if our quarterly review doesn't come out until the end of Next Fest, how are they going to know what demos to play?
Exactly,
They
right?
industry people are catching up. They're
Mm-hmm.
learning.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. um The other topic before we get into our deep dive was one that was requested in Discord. And it's something that we've kind of talked a little bit about, but also haven't revisited other than sort of maybe the one time we sort of talked about it and it wasn't an official capacity. So I wanted to shout out, I think it's, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your handle, I think it's Jopo, who asked in the Discord what sort of game journaling entails. Jopo says, I'm currently like building an app that incorporates taking notes during gaming sessions, but sometimes I just want to write handwritten notes and I'm still trying to figure out what truly works for me. This is brought on by the fact that I put down Xenoblade Chronicles 3 for a bit and I cannot fully remember exactly what I was doing. But basically, I'm wondering if there are any specific episodes that talk more about journaling, and that question made me realize we don't really have that. So I thought, and I posted and responded like, "Hey, we'll chat about this week." So,
Oh, what a topic.
Joel, yeah, I'm curious because I think you started journaling games for Geeks and Grounds, right? You did not do
Yeah,
any of that
right.
beforehand.
Mm-mm.
As a relatively
Mm.
newer journaler, like what's been working for you and like what's been your strategy?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with like the beginning of my journey was
Mm-hmm.
I did kind of an interactive notebook approach for those of you who have been in middle school in the last 10 to 15 years. So basically, like the left side of my notebook, I had just events. What are the things that are happening, like important things? And on the right, I would have critical questions, insights that I didn't want to forget, curiosities that I had as they were happening. And I would kind of bullet it out that way. What eventually became frustrating for me with that approach was I would finish my on either side. Sometimes I would finish my whole list of left side activities and only have like one question, and now I feel like I'm wasting paper by going to the next page. Or the inverse, where like one thing happens and my mind just starts going crazy and I have all these thoughts about like what's going on, and it fills the whole right side of the page, and now I have to move forward. And so ultimately that became not super sustainable for me.
Mm-hmm.
I am a big outline thinker and a big flowchart thinker. Those are like the ways I organize my thoughts. And so, what is working for me in most cases is an outline based approach. Main bullet point is a thing that happens. Sub bullet points are questions or curiosities that I have. I have a couple of key like legend based icons that I'll use, like a double star is like, this is a really important talking point for the podcast, and a single star is like, that's a character moment that I don't want to lose. And I think that that has been the most effective for me in talking about games on the podcast, as long as it's a linear game. In non-linear games, I am finding more luck with flowcharts. So like, this happens, box line to the next big event, and here are the branching things that I could be doing, but here's the one that I'm going to focus on for now, and I'll come back to that thing later. That's kind of been my approach. I think there's a need, something that I'm hitting actually in Expedition 33, where I'm so obsessed with this game. I'm putting hours and hours into it instead of just beating it. And one of the things that I'm realizing is, in a game like this, where your character spec is so important to your gameplay and your experience, I almost need, like, up front, a character list that I can, like, for games like that, like, add parts of the spec to, so that I don't forget. So like, oh, I'm swapping out this skill for that skill for this one boss fight, but I need to go back to that other skill, like writing that down, having it as like, this is their default versus this is like, in this situation, what I'm going to do differently. I almost am like, I'm missing that in my note-taking style right now, is like something that is like character. So that's where I maybe would look to evolve in the coming period. But
yeah. That's interesting. Are you taking notes during Expedition 33, or are you just like playing it for funsies?
Mostly just playing it, but I definitely am having to take notes, because there are things that I see where it's like, I can't deal with that right now, and I don't want to forget it. So it's more of like a reminder list than like full on game notes at this point.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I think definitely something for like character specs would be really helpful for that game.
For sure. But how about you? Like, you're obviously like the OG notebooker, the OG in beer. So what's going on?
And beer. Yeah, so I have many notebooks because I'm also constantly playing and trying different formats, simply because I think it's fun. I like note taking. I like it as an act. So I think that is also something that has inspired me and probably makes me really predispositioned to like something like this, where I think not everyone needs to necessarily take notes on their game or have it even be handwritten. I also vary my notes, like you, depending on the game that I'm playing, and then the sort of, I would say, my mood, I guess, to put it really simply. Generally, I mix it up between essentially flowcharts or mind maps, sort of random, literally just like on the page. I will just put bullet points just randomly and just kind of like without any sort of hierarchy. I also do just more linear sort of T-chart or like interactive, notes, where it's basically, again, on one side, there's the event, on the other are my questions. I've also been playing with doing, and before that, I also do sort of event and then like, or section of the game and then reflections. So especially for a game like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Remaster, or whatever, Rebirth and whatever, I would finish a section, or like I would play the game and I wouldn't want to take notes because I'm just in it and I'm excited and I just want to enjoy it. And note taking took me out of that world too much.
That is real.
What I did was I would say, okay, well, I'm going to play the game. And then when I'm done, I'm going to bullet point what happened and then do a little reflection on just like how I feel after I played, some of the things I learned. So that was another format. And most recently, I've been playing with writing like little letters to the game after finishing the game. Most recently, I did that with like Lost Records, and I found that really satisfying. I also did that with Butterfly Soup, and that was really satisfying because that allowed me to synthesize it a little bit more than simply take notes on what was happening, which is more helpful for the podcast because it organizes my thoughts so I don't forget a section. But as a person, the letters and like the post-game reflections really help me, synthesize and make the connections that I think are a little bit more important to me as a person. So the letter is also really fun because it makes me feel less academic and more just like if I was writing a letter to a friend, essentially. And it's funny because I will write the letter to the game as if the game was a person. And so I will maybe bring up some beef with them, or I will say, like, I really appreciated you when you did this. So it's kind of a fun way to do notes without doing notes.
Yeah.
Maybe a little cheesy, but I don't care.
I love that. I mean, like I think about like books that I've finished, and like when I was in college and I was writing papers on my books, I know the durability for like how long I was really able to hold on to that
Mm-hmm.
plot and those themes and those characters. And I know that when I read for fun, outside of Brando Sando, who I'm just constantly checking in on Wikipedia and whatever for, I have a
Mm-hmm.
hard time holding on to things beyond like a couple of years. So I can see like
Yeah.
synthesizing things in letters like that, how that would really change how you engage or feel about a project maybe after it's done.
Yeah, I was thinking just as a personal fun project. I think it was, oh, I'm sorry, my memory is so bad because also I'm still like a little travel fatigued, but I think it was maybe Pixelated or Valis, one of the two, who mentioned last year that they were going to create that like print
Yeah.
of their game journal. And I was like, that is so amazing. And I think I do so much of mine, and they do it digitally. And I think there are quite a few people in the community who do taking notes digitally, whether in Notion or just in a Google Doc, which I think is great because also if you're doing it digitally, you can use your voice app. That's also one thing I used to use a long time
Oh.
ago. I would basically just turn on my phone the voice app, right, or the voice recording, and as I was playing, I would just talk into my phone and it would take the notes for me. And then I do a little bit of synthesis as I like organized it. But that's another thing that I tried for a little bit.
What am I
Um,
doing? You're living in the 33rd century. I'm over here in 1979 playing on my Atari, writing in a real notebook. What's
yeah,
happening?
no, I mean, I do that too. So I actually got that idea because for my students, that was actually something I had them do to write papers. And so, because some of them really didn't like typing or preferred to talk versus like, go through the writing
Sure.
process. And so as an accommodation, I was like, all right, well, here, just tell me your thoughts and this will transcribe it and you don't have to like write, quote unquote. So it's like, I don't care if you're typing it. I just want to know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And that's what inspired that strategy.
So cool.
Yeah. And I don't know. I go through, so I have one notebook that I've been kind of using. I have this other sort of set of notebooks that I have like a game tracker in as well, just to keep notes on what I'm playing, like just a general list, not like actual
Yeah.
notes, just a list of what I'm playing, as well as I have some random notes in here. Um, it's kind of all over the place. I think my goal for this coming year is to try and synthesize it into one place a little bit more because I experiment so much, it's kind of all over the place. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's something really valuable in taking notes and trying to slow down and figure out like those connections.
I love that.
Yeah. I'll say blueprints, games like blueprints are ones that I do the mind map, or just here are some pages of doodles and scribbles and I look like I'm going through something because it's all over the place, but it's organized to me. So those are kind of fun too because you look back and you're just like, what it means even though no one else knows what it means.
Man, I gotta say, like one of my favorite tools is like a dungeon master is Oblivion, and it's like an
Mhm.
ontology neural net note taking tool.
Mhm.
And I think all the time about how it is the most efficient way to store and navigate through notes that I've ever engaged with. But
Mhm.
the idea of like actually hopping in, typing like hashtag theme colon, type out in the theme, like I have such a hard time imagining myself stopping in a game to type something. But the
Right.
idea of connecting it to your voice is chef's kiss. What a great idea.
If anyone else says this idea, they took it from us.
Yeah,
So
from Jenny
everyone,
specifically.
yeah.
Get
So,
on them.
no, but yeah, I don't know. I think the biggest thing, I guess, for me and my passion and the reason I harp so much on taking notes, um, is the fact that kind of what you mentioned, where after a year, a couple of years at best, if you really like something, um, it's very easy for you to forget why you liked it, what was important to you.
That's right.
And I think what's really cool is that notes allow you to capture that a little bit more tangibly. And what's really cool is if you take notes on something and you go back and replay it and you find you draw different things from it. I've done that with Undertale a couple of times where after I finish Undertale, I don't take notes throughout the duration because for me, that's not the point. But after I finish Undertale, I'll usually write, again, just a few sentences. It doesn't have to be long. You don't have to do a report on how it makes you feel. And I usually will write down a few sentences, put that in my journal, put it away. And I've gone back and checked, and the things that I pay attention to are the things that I take from the game on subsequent playthroughs, not just because I'm like seeing more in the game, but because I'm in a different place, is really fascinating. So, yeah, just a really cool way to engage with games, I think.
Cool. Well, I love hearing about this. I know that we've had people get in the comments before about their notebooking strategies. Would love to hear like about the evolution maybe of notebooking strategies. Like how have you changed in your strategies over the years? That would be cool to hear.
Yeah, I would love that. Last thing too, I will say, speaking of evolution, so I should have prepared a little better and like had more visuals to show. If I remember, I'll try and like take pictures to show like different formats at least, or maybe I'll just take a picture of this one because some of the writing is a little bit personal, so I won't show the writing necessarily. But I also have done more visual game journaling as well, where either I'll print screenshots. It's kind of like what I used to do as a kid, where like I'd go to the library and print pictures of Sailor Moon just because I wanted to have
Dragon
pictures
Ball
of Sailor
Z.
Moon.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
the same.
it's like we all did it as kids. But what I have done before is I'll print screenshots. Maybe I'll write down a few favorite quotes and create almost like a scrapbook that encompasses the experience of playing it, or like a mood board. So I think also if you don't enjoy writing, you don't want to take notes or anything like that, you can also do like game journaling in different ways. You can do the visual mediums, you can create soundtracks, which is what we've done as an activity before, is like here are some, like create just a playlist of the songs that remind you of the game or the characters.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know, we should bring that back. Ooh, maybe we'll have to do that for like, I don't know, like Final Fantasy X. I think that would be really fun because that's got a lot to work with.
Very cool.
But yeah, so I would say if you're someone who's interested in it, maybe you find that it's not like hitting for you for whatever reason, but you're still trying to figure out ways to engage. Sorry, there's a sneeze like right on the edge of my nose. I would say, yeah, pig's feet. That's that the key to not sneezing?
That's what I tell my students when they're about to sneeze and they didn't want to. Yeah. And sometimes it helped. I don't know.
Let's say it helped. I'm not sneezing, so that's perfect.
Good job, Joel. Way to go.
But yeah, I would say find ways that work for you, and the goal, I mean, you can make your goal whatever you want it to be, but the intention for me sharing this and like making this a part of Geeks and Grounds was to just find a way to like sort of personalize and synthesize that experience of playing the game for you, whatever that means for you.
That feels like a really healthy approach, and a way that you can make it like a sustainable practice and not just like set it and forget it, like you're doing it. And like, we don't want this to feel like homework, right? We want this to be something that like you get to engage with and have fun with. So that's the big thing. Yeah.
I think, I think it's just about what's fun for you.
It turns out video games, it's about what's fun for you.
Yeah. Go figure. Honestly, with some people, you wonder. But
that's a great point. Shots fired.
Yeah, that's right. Hot takes. Spicy takes. But yeah, so thank you so much, Jopo, for asking the question. I will, now that I'm back and able to like type a little bit more, I'll also, if additional thoughts come through, I'll put them in Discord. But I love to talk journaling. So yeah. That's it for this week's pastry case. It's a little bit of a beefier one. Just to close us out, notable releases for this week. Again, we have a full release calendar of games on geeksandgrounds.com. If you go to the website, there's a little thing at the top that says release calendar. These are just games that I'm keeping track of beyond just the two that I mentioned. So you can go there, wish list games that you're interested in. But shouting out 2 games this week for releasing. Cast and Chill, which is, I think, one that I've mentioned before. Very relaxing fishing game. I'm not usually a fishing game fan, but this just had the most beautiful audio,
This
most
is
beautiful
gorgeous.
visuals, right? So, Cast and Chill, a relaxing fishing game. And then, which also was in the Frosty Game Showcase, and Date Everything, where literally you are dating everything. I think there's over 100 characters in this game.
Who is this? Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego looking character? There's a character with a huge hat that is a
Right?
magnifying glass on the Steam homepage.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed.
Yeah. This game looks it looks huge. Apparently every character has like 3 different endings and there's 100 characters. They're all
Dang.
voiced. I think it's the who's who of VO because like everyone is in it. And you play this person who I guess has lost your job, but somehow you get these magical glasses that allow you to date every object in your house and then some. So if
Wow.
you've ever wanted to date your water heater or your toaster, this is the time.
It's real Beauty and the Beast vibes right now.
Yes, for sure.
Where's the feather duster, I think, as I recall.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, yeah. So as always, just like the game release calendar, if you go to geeksandgrounds.com, you can sign up for the newsletter where all the links to the demos that we've talked about today and the notable releases and everything else will be in there. So that is it for the pastry case. Now moving on to this week's brew.
Ooh.
This is the third week of 4, going through our one-shots. Next week, we're going to play Serre. And yeah, this one is tonally the most different of the 4 games. It's kind of a random one, partially because I've had this in a bundle. I don't know if you purchased it way back when. This was like in 2020, but itch.io, which is a platform where a lot of indie games release. Hobbyists also do game jams. They had this bundle for racial, I believe it was like a racial justice bundle is what it was called. And it came out during 2020. It fundraised basically for Black Lives Matter and made a huge splash, and it's got hundreds of games in it. This was one of those games, and I've been wanting to play it for since 2020, basically. So I just decided just to throw it in here, considering the state of the US and the world.
Perfectly timed.
And it's called Extreme Meatpunks Forever. It's by Heather Flowers. It originally released in 2018 episodically across 6 different chapters, so 6 different episodes. And yeah, like the last few weeks, we're going to start with sort of summary of the game, just non-spoiler, our high-level thoughts, non-spoiler, and then we'll deep dive, which will be spoiler. So Joel, as the resident summarizer.
You summarized this game. Whew. Okay.
Yeah, here we go.
This is a classic tale of a bit of I would say, found family. You have a group of people coming together from a variety of different kind of demographics and identities that are on the run from fascists in their small town on their journey to Hopeville. And they are going to encounter trials and tribulations along the way. A lot of highly engaging moments between characters, things that they disagree about, things where characters are overstepping, like some pretty real life drama, I would say. And then next to that, you have a very surreal story where your characters are getting into mech suits to fight other mechs sometimes, or kind of surreal horrors in some cases, and all of this is kind of set on the backdrop of maybe like an impending apocalypse. So a lot of really cool storytelling, character development along the way.
Nice. Yeah. Once again,
good enough.
Impeccable summary. No one does it better in the biz.
Oh man. Wow. I'm writing that in my game journal tonight.
Yeah, there we go. Marker, bold highlight.
Dear journal, Jenny says no one does it better in the biz.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary. I agree. I think what really attracts me to this game, the very first thing is that element of found family. It's one of my favorite tropes in storytelling. I think it's a really powerful one. Um, I'm very curious, just sort of high level, your thoughts, because you sent me a text and I was just like, oh, I am very much looking forward to this conversation.
Generally, my takeaway is that I don't think this is a game for me. Like, I don't know that I would recommend this to people who had similar tastes to me.
Mm,
um, I really liked the interpersonal dynamics. To me, that was the
yeah.
best part of the game. Like, you have characters like this. Found family is not like people who don't know each other come together and become a family. It's like these people, a lot of them have baggage in history and they don't like each other, and they
Mm-hmm.
work through that. And some people are demeaning, and it's not like you get a clean, clear cleanup of that. um, and so it, like, to me, that really sang, and I really, really enjoyed that. I thought the character art was like, key art was really cool, the backdrops were really cool. What did not work for me is the game experience itself. One, I just had
Mm,
a lot of glitches, like, in the game itself. But then the actual mechanics of the, like, action parts where you're in your mech suit, you're kind
mm-hmm.
of this little blocky blob. Like, imagine if someone were saying, like, here's Oregon Trail, but you're in a mech suit. That's about the vibe that I had playing it.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that in, like, Arco. Like, that type of
Yeah.
graphic and game approach is just not, it doesn't grab me. And especially for a game that's dealing with mechs, and they have a TTRPG, I found. And in a
Mm-hmm.
TTRPG, you see the character key art for the mechs.
Yeah.
It was such a, for me, a letdown that you never see these mechs in the game,
Mm-hmm.
and that level of abstraction just didn't work for me. And I was
Yeah.
also bad at it, so I found that if I just killed myself at the beginning of every battle, I could skip the fight. Which, thank you for including that. But, like, I was getting so frustrated by that that eventually I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm just gonna skip these fights. Like, it's just not working for me. So that
Yeah.
was my general takeaway.
Yeah. Okay. And actually, it's not far from mine. On
Oh, great.
so we're pretty similar. I would say, yeah, for me, the shining sort of moments were all the narrative moments. I loved getting to know the characters. I loved that they're messy. I think the word used in the itch page is like disaster queer. It's like everything is
That's great.
so sort of chaotic and messy and not polished in the best of ways
Yeah.
with these characters and with the story and how they're interacting. I think the world is really fascinating as we explore. There's so much not explained in this visual novel that I found myself really wanting more. And part of that is, I think, maybe it's saved for season two, but some of it is just like, oh my gosh, there's a world here that I think there's so much more to dig into, which of course they have the TTRPG, which lets you get into more detail there. And I agree. I think where I really struggled personally was the combat section, mostly because it required a patience that I just didn't really have. I was playing on the go, and so I was just kind of like not in my best setup even, and so I was just wanting it to sort of work a bit more smoothly than it did. I like the concept of the battles, but it just, the execution for me, I just wasn't very good at it. So I found myself also skipping the battles. I would give them at least like one or two tries, but then there were a couple that I ended up just skipping because they ended up going so long. I just did not have the time.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, yeah, very similar, I think, feeling. Um, I think, yeah, I didn't mind the visual elements of the combat as much. I think for me, it kind of led or leaned into sort of that feeling of like a punk sort of zine almost, from
Mm,
like it's almost intentionally
for sure.
not super polished. And so I was kind of like okay with that for myself. But I can see also, like, I remember you mentioning that when we were playing Arco. So it's also like just a personal
Yeah,
taste
this
thing.
is my thing.
Um,
There were several
yeah.
times that I got stuck in the bushes and could not fight, could not die, could
No.
not kill
Oh,
someone else, and had to, like, restart an entire section of the game. Like, this happened like two or
yeah.
three times. And it's
Oh
just like,
no.
it is such a drag when that happens. And yeah,
What was the save? So were the save, there's no like sort of easy. into like where you were, I guess, or where did it like pick up if you got stuck?
I think it kind of would take you to the beginning of that day again. So you'd have to go back through all the
Okay.
character dialogue of that day. So like it could have been a lot
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah.
But that was ultimately the final straw for me. I was like, I was really struggling with the combat
Yeah.
already. And then when my characters just started getting stuck in the bushes, I
Ugh,
was like,
yeah.
I think I'm good. I think I'm good on this.
That's understandable. Yeah, no, I would be the same, honestly. I didn't experience those bugs, but if I did, um, I would have significantly been frustrated, I think.
Mm,
Again, considering I was also playing a little bit on like extra late nights because of
mm.
travel.
Can I ask?
Um, yeah.
Since we're in high level, and you
Hmm.
referenced this that like there's clearly a world here, but you don't learn very much about it, and you're kind of hoping
Yeah.
that season two, like for me, this was a point of frustration. Like
Mm,
I was
hmm.
also very curious about this world where it seems like a lot of people have access to mechs. It seems like there's some sort of deific and supernatural element to the world.
Hmm.
And I, especially, and I will not talk about the end game right now, but like, especially when you get to the end game, I was just like, I feel like we finished this whole season and I didn't actually learn anything about the world. So I'm curious about like, how did that balance feel to you? Did it feel more like intriguing, and you're like
Mm.
wanting to learn more later, or more like, for me, I was a little lackluster. Like I wanted to know more now to know if I am interested in going into the next world or the next season.
Yeah. I think I would be really interested if anyone in the community had played this when it was coming out,
Hmm.
because I think I personally benefited from the fact that I knew there was a season 2. I saw some of the TTRPG materials, and so while I was curious about the world, I was actually quite content in just letting those be questions and letting the story be more about the characters themselves versus learning about the world. Mostly because I was like, I know there's more stuff, so I'm just fine, like letting it sort of linger
Cool.
and assume that other materials will cover that other stuff. But it sounds like for you it was more of a point of frustration, or at least like
Yeah, I just
want.
for it to be a complete season is kind of actually when we talked
Hmm.
about like Severance, right? For a
Yeah.
complete season, I need to feel like I am watching a full arc.
Hmm.
And I don't feel like I got that with any of the characters or their relationships or the plot. Like I don't feel like
Yeah.
I got a full arc from any of it.
Hmm.
And especially because of the slowdowns with the combat, I was like, the story elements themselves and the character dynamics you could work through slowly in 30 minutes. And it's like, well, for as much time as I'm spending in here, there could have been a lot more world building or character, like one or the other.
Hmm.
There could have been more of, and that would have gotten me from a like a. I don't think I'd recommend this. Like maybe not for me personally, but like I would recommend it. I think that's kind of the distinction for me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think, yeah, I was definitely more content with it. I didn't see as much issue. I do feel like it did leave, like, it wasn't a really satisfying season finale, like kind of going back to the analogy we've been using all all of this year. Um, but at the same time, it felt like it still, I don't know, I think I was kind of at the same place as I was with like Lost Records as I was by the end of this season 1
Yes.
personally, which I'm kind of like, I wish there was more, but also it's just kind of what it is. And at this point, like I've made my peace, I think, with Lost Records a little bit
Mm.
in retrospect. And I think it's just kind of like, all right, this is a season of TV, for example, a season of storytelling. I don't think they hit the mark, but I think the moments of the story still made enough of an impact that I was invested in what we did engage with.
I cannot wait for us to start talking about the characters because there are definitely some
Hmm.
things that really worked, and I do not want to take away from that because
Yeah,
to me the character dynamics are what made this game absolutely
definitely.
worth playing for the community.
Yeah. So I think just high level overview, it seems like both of us, I think you're a little bit more cold on it where you wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily recommend it to other folks. I feel like I would recommend it if not, even though like if I had to give it a numerical score, which again, just to like contextualize it a little bit, I would give this like a 3 out of 5, for example. It's not an outstanding game, but I also think it has enough there that I think it's worth playing. So I would recommend it to folks who are into narrative games, just knowing there are big asterisks on sort of expectations
Mm-hmm,
that you should
mm-hmm.
have going in.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah. So I think, let's see. I would say definite, like not a major content warning, but there is a content warning for this game. There are fascists, so that kind of gives you a little context.
There's some hard
Depending,
moments for
yeah,
sure.
there depending on the choices that you make, there are some really difficult conversations. So if you would like, check out the playthrough guide. Also mention like depending on the choices that you make, I think there's talk of like depression, anxiety, and I think someone contemplating thoughts of suicide. So just as a heads up, that may be where the conversation goes, or is where the conversation is going to go at some point in the deep dive. I think that's it. Are you ready for the deep dive?
I'm ready to dive in to blood sports.
Into your mech suit.
I have a whole series of mechs on my desktop.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I relax when I am in need of mental refresh. So we are
Yes.
right in my comfort zone right now, as they say, and I'm eager to dive in.
That's perfect. And I am not usually a fan of mechs. So
Mm.
that is also a bit of context for everyone. I usually do not enjoy mech stories. So I was a bit nervous going into this game
Well,
for
the
that
good news
reason.
is there's very little actual mech, so no
Yeah,
problem.
it kind of worked out in my favor, honestly. So we'll start and just go chronologically. Episode
Hmm.
1, Pilots Part 1. Um, we begin in a bar watching the game, the big
The
game.
big game.
Mm-hmm.
This gave me such butterfly soup opening scene, like at the baseball park.
It really did,
Like
yeah.
you open up, you meet two characters, Sam and Jason,
Mm-hmm.
that are at this game having a conversation. At the same time, things are getting rowdy around them. Like other people in the crowd are saying like slurs and like hateful things. Eventually they
Mm-hmm.
do get explicitly labeled, is it fash, is that the abbreviation that we
Mm-hmm.
get? They get labeled fash, which is like, oh, helpful, I know who the bad guys are. And a really heartfelt conversation about two people that are joking about the game and talking about cryptids, which are going to be represented in this world. And at the same time, we learn that Jason is leaving tomorrow, is going to
Mm-hmm.
the big city. And that conversation was gutting to me.
Yeah.
You know what? It also reminded me of Night in the Woods when the
Mm-hmm.
characters are going to go to the big city. And Jason's rationale is something like, I just cannot die here. Like, I have to know that I've left this city and
Mm-hmm.
like tried to find a different place that like seems like that he could fit in better. So how
Yeah.
did this scene hit you, like as we're kind of learning about our first two characters?
Yeah, I also thought like, oh man, I had so many feelings because at first I was really I mean, I was happy. I love these two characters. They're joking around. They definitely get along. They definitely have a long history together. I mean, Jason, he's like I think it says something along the lines of like, I know that you're the only other gay person here, but
Right.
we're besties. Like we're here for each other. I love you. Well, they don't say I love you, but you get the feeling, right? It's like these two have been there for each other. They really do care about each other. Yeah, the leaving for the city instantly, I was like, oh my gosh, butterfly soup moving to Florida. Like, what is it with these games?
This is the new like Disney opening where like a kid's parents are dead at the beginning. Like
Yeah.
that's what we're getting right now from these
Oh
indie
my
games
gosh.
circa
Yeah.
2018.
It's so true. I'm like, what is it in the water in 2018 that this is the thing? Um, and what I think was really interesting is how quickly and definitively this game just does not allow, like, fascists are in the game. You know, the fash are the people that you are fighting, but it still does not give them any room to actually be hateful in the game. And what I mean by that
Oh,
is
that's such a good
you're
point.
you're like, instead of saying the slurs that the fascists would say, the game just says hateful slurs. You know, it's like there isn't even room in the game for
Mm.
that stuff to be there, even when they're represented. And I thought that was really cool because I was a little bit nervous going in, knowing that this game was about fighting fascism, like how intense it would get from that respect. And I thought that was really, really nice.
Take note, Quentin Tarantino. Like sometimes just saying the words themselves as a part of a
Yeah.
story is furthering the harm. And like
Mhm.
I did not even pick up on that. That is a great point. Uh I'll say one of the things that stood out to me in this opening scene is Jason has had a few drinks and
Oh,
is
yes.
not chill. Like what
No.
what strikes me is that like there's a world where this scene happens and Jason and Sam quiet themselves so as to not, arouse frustration around among
Mhm.
these like evil bastards. Uh but that's not what happens, and I love the game for that. That like
Mhm.
no, like people should be able to be boisterous and loud and themselves without fear. And if someone is saying hateful shit to you, like you don't owe them compliance or to like
Mhm.
make yourself smaller. And like, I just thought like coming out hard with that was like,
Yeah.
so good. That was great.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just the setup, like this initial scene, getting to know these characters, seeing how the game is handling already the sort of the protagonist versus the antagonist of the game. I just thought was a really strong, like, okay, I know what this game is about. I know what these developers are about. Like I think the scene has been effectively set. Um I also thought and noted that it was interesting that the fash I wrote talk like internet trolls, um, where our protagonists, the main characters that we play, speak. They also speak in a very sort of casual, almost internet like talk. Like none of the letters are capitalized, things are abbreviated, all of that. The fash specifically talk like you are reading a bad Reddit, a bad subreddit sort of forum. Um, and I think that was just it's just a detail that kind of made me chuckle a little bit.
I didn't pick up on that. You're totally right. There are like this talking about games that are just similar to Butterfly Soup, laden with references. This is another one,
Yes.
so
Oh my gosh,
definitely pick up on
yes.
that.
Um, but yeah, so you basically get into a fight with the Fash. You get into your meat suit. You leave the bar. You're like, all right, we're doing this. You get into your meat suit for the first time. This is where we get a scene shift from what we've been seeing, which we've normally been seeing sort of stereotypical 2D visual novel format where you've got your characters on either side, text box sort of in the bottom, and the environment in the background. The meat suit scene, oh, these are my favorite moments, honestly, because you get this insight into the character that I think is really cool.
I fully agree that this is very cool, and it also is a point of frustration for how little I
Yeah.
learned about it. Um, so what I'll
Yeah.
say is like, especially for our, we love doing Evangelion shout out. Uh, in the same way that Evangelion, like you're getting the internal narration of the
Hmm.
characters as they are getting their like bodies plugged into these mech suits with like your nervous system is now the
Right.
mech suit's nervous system. You had a similar thing here, like a plug is getting jammed into the spine, it sounds like, of the characters,
Yeah.
and you start living through them, like experiencing that. And all of the characters that are going to be pilots are going to have different experiences. You're seeing this like harsh red background with this text
Mm-hmm.
in front of you. Sam specifically has a really hard time. Sam is the one who's going to be doing the fighting. This opening scene, like, has a hard time syncing up with their mech initially.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, all of this part, incredible. Like, I loved that this was
Yes.
happening. I just needed more about what is actually going on with these
Yeah.
mechs. They
Yeah.
say we're going to meet in the parking lot in 5 minutes, and a bunch of people have mechs. There's mechs all over the place. It's like, are mechs equivalent to cars in this world? Does everyone just have a mech laying about? Like, are they not special to have a mech? I don't understand this part of the world.
Yeah. I think for me, especially just with the context clues, I kind of assumed many people have mechs, but not all. I think you later see a character, Brad, who talks a lot about scavenging parts. So it feels like very almost Mad Maxian, where it's like everyone, if you can get access to it, you still have to struggle to like kind of keep it up and running. But for me, it sort of did feel like the Mad Max sort of equivalent of, instead of cars, you have these meat mechs. I was really intrigued by the fact that the mechs were meat and not metal. And I think I kind of like that the game didn't dive into it because it was a little bit more interesting for me to think about what that would represent. I think the whole game, as we go through, the mechs are this embodiment of the people that are within them. And I think what's interesting is in these kind of like an Evangelion and sort of all these other mech oriented anime in particular, there is a cleanness and a crispness and a definitive like identity that happens when you're in a mech. And I think by having it be like meat and messy is a really cool concept, because this is the messiness of like the humans sort of externalized even in this more powerful form. So for me, I love the concept, and I actually was kind of okay, even though I would have been very happy to have more context with the whole thing. I did appreciate just like thinking about it.
I will say that is the mech setup of Evangelion, that they are like actual
Mm,
like meat based humanoid giants that are also wearing like plated armor, and
mm-hmm.
like that psychological element, like I felt like this was obviously like an intentional reference
Right.
to that, like the idea that your psychology as the pilot plays into the actions of the
Mm-hmm.
mech itself. I loved that really worked for me. One of my favorite elements of this game for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you get into your first battle, you learn that Sam has the special ability. Oh, and you also learn everyone has a name when they're in their mech. And I thought this was also really cool because it sort of indicates a little bit more about them as a person. And Sam is Roots Among Ash.
That's their names. I could not figure out if this was just like a magic word they were saying as like the
Oh,
last part
yeah.
of their sync.
Mm-hmm.
This makes so much that thank you for that, Jenny. That
Okay.
helps, because I couldn't understand,
Okay.
like, you watch these like psychological moments and then they end by saying this thing in all capitalized letters,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, oh, is this like a password or something? But the idea that it's a name that is emblematic of something to do with the pilot and the mech together,
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Okay, that thank you. Like, mystery solved.
Nice. One down. I don't know how many
A
how
million more to
many
go.
go. Um but yeah, so Sam has the power to teleport, which is really cool. This was actually personally my favorite of the mechs.
Same.
It was just so useful. It was the only thing that really allowed me to win battles. I tried to rotate between all of them because throughout the game you can put
Yep.
different leaders as sort of your point people, and that's who you battle with. And Sam was consistently the one that I would actually win with.
Yep.
So,
Same. Same.
um,
I guess we should say like the battle mechanics are kind of like a King of the Hill bumper boat style. Like,
yeah.
you're trying to bump the other mech out of the ring, essentially, like off the cliff or into the spikes or what have
Hmm.
you. And that's kind of how you win. And then you can
Yeah.
kind of immobilize them through doing damage as well.
Yes. Which again, conceptually, I really liked it in practice, I felt like it didn't feel as good as I had wanted it to feel.
Yeah.
And not in a way of like, oh, I wish it felt, because I wouldn't have minded if it was just like a little bit rough or more challenging, because conceptually that also makes sense. But it just didn't quite click for me personally.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So yeah, you fight the Fash, knock them into a ditch, and basically you have to run from the cops. And this is the constant theme that we're going to be seeing throughout the game itself. And as you run away, because you hear the sirens, Sam and Jason both kind of run into what seems to be like corn stalks in a cornfield. And they're able to hide out for the evening. And they use that as an opportunity to have essentially their final conversation. It seems to be their final conversation together. This was so sweet. And there was an opportunity to confess. And I'm wondering if you chose to confess feelings that Sam has for Jason.
I did not.
Me neither. Dang it. I was hoping you would confess.
It just didn't like, I just didn't feel like I knew enough. And like,
Yeah.
one of the things I do not like in some forms of media is where like every gay or queer character has to have a thing for every other gay or queer character. Like, I feel like it really
Mm-hmm.
reduces the importance of friendships and community. And I
Mm-hmm.
just didn't get anything from that opening scene that made me feel like, oh, I should do the romance thing in this moment. So
Same. Agreed. I also did not confess for the same reasons. I was not sure what would have led us to confess other than as a player if I had wanted that to be a romance. And I personally did not see that as a romance. So yeah,
yeah,
same. Um, but yeah, that's where you hear more from Jason, how he wants to find himself in the big city, which again is just that always makes me so sad to hear. Like you mentioned, Night in the Woods, or even in my life experience, living places and seeing people feel like they have to leave to find themselves. I think there's a validity to that, but also it makes me a little bit sad at the same time. It's a little bit bittersweet.
it is hard living in a city where it is rare to stumble across people of similar perspectives.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that was a big motivating factor of leaving Indiana, coming to Portland's. Like,
Hmm.
it's hard. And I
Yeah,
think, even among someone who has like a very privileged upbringing, like I had, like it can just be hard. So,
for sure.
you know,
The scene changes then next day, and we meet two new characters, Cass and Leanna. They're both at the grocery store, working what seems to be their basic, clerk service kind of job, stocking shelves, working the register. I don't know, I instantly felt like I knew who Cass was, and I instantly felt like I knew who Leanna was.
top characters of the
Um,
game for me. I even though I did almost all of my successful battles as Sam, Cass and Leanna,
yeah, Leanna.
are the two that I had the most like personal, like these are my friends in real life. I know these people.
Yeah, yeah. I think both of them are really complex and flawed in very compelling ways. Cass, they are really unemotional, like really closed off when we first meet them, very quiet, very subdued. Of course, we learn there is more to that than meets the eye. But Cass is very like stoic almost
Mm,
when talking with Leanna. And Leanna is almost like an opposite in terms of how she is just like ready to jump into action, ready to get things done, and kind of like an instigator in a lot of ways,
yeah,
which is great. They make for a very fun duo.
I agree. I think like Leanna feels very much like the embodiment of some of the characterization we got from Jason in the opening scene. Like,
Mm-hmm.
not gonna quiet herself down for anyone or anything. And I
Mm-hmm.
really liked that. We also like we see Leanna's in a wheelchair, so like there's an element of that that's like, okay, how does this, again, like my question always when we see anything that's like representative of a specific people group, it's like, are they going to honor this as part of the story, or is it just going to be there? And again, I think this is a game that does that well, like incorporates this into their story, and I really appreciated it. Cass, though, man, in terms of like a character that I was immediately felt drawn to, that like I knew how this person was going to think and operate in my playthrough. Fantastic. Just such a well-drawn character.
Yeah, I think they were my number one favorite, with Leanna as my personal second favorite.
Yep.
And we'll meet another character, which was my third favorite.
Oh.
Yeah, you gotta love Brad, Ultra Brad.
Oh, I thought you were
so
talking about
good.
the youth pastor. Okay, never mind.
Oh God.
We do learn about a really important concept in this scene, which is corn screaming, where you take all your frustrations, you go out in the middle of a cornfield, and you just scream.
Yeah, I wrote, is this a Midwest thing?
I've never corn screamed as a person who was raised around cornfields, so I mean, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I just
perhaps
didn't experience
this version of the world, corn screaming has evolved to exist.
Exactly.
So Leanna invites Cass to essentially what seems to be like a meat punk community group that is being held in the basement level of a church. I don't know why this felt very comical to me, just considering everything else, that there's this resistance group that meets in the basement level of a church. I don't know. There's just a certain slight comic to that. And I also wrote down as a side note, love the ASCII art. So, it's because the environment art itself is like ASCII with like gradients and color texture on top.
So cool.
It was really cool, and it was different from the portraits, which were like hand-drawn 2D visual portraits. So yeah, I wrote down, this is where I noticed the environment art. The scene changes again. We are in front of what seems to be the street that the church is on. You see a flyer float down. A lone mech pilot picks up the flyer and looks at it, and the scene then changes to episode 2. Before we go into episode 2, any thoughts?
We do get a great Jujutsu Kaisen reference at this point, when Cass is like, oh, you'd fight the cops or whatever, the fashion. And Cass is like, nah. Or Leanna's like, nah, I'd win. Which is one of my favorite quotes in all of anime. So that was very fun.
Nice.
That was the only other thought I had on this chapter.
Nice. Yeah. And again, episode 1, chapter 1, we are just setting the scene, meeting these characters. Episode 2 is called Pilots Part 2. So I read this and I'm like, all right, we're just going to meet the rest of the characters. Like, that's going to be kind of what we focus on. And that's pretty much what we do. This is one of the most hilarious scenes in the game, I think, where they're in the church. Leanna is getting ready with Cass to try and figure out, like, all right, people show up. What are we going to do? Oh, what time zone did you put? And for some reason, they put mountain time, I think, or she put mountain time on there. So they're just like, okay, is anyone going to show up? Like, what is happening with this flyer? And then we meet Brad, who is the first person to walk into the church basement to join the Meat Punks community in this area. Brad, he honestly, I found him so funny and charming. You learn he's just like really good with tech. He just knows how to repair these mech suits really easily. Like, he's just gifted at that. And he and Leanna decide to do a like intro activity, share your name, share your pronouns. And I chose to describe your latest near-death experience.
Oh, that's the same.
Oh my gosh. Okay, cool.
I loved this. Brad comes in, and the energy that he brings is one of, I'm too in my own element to have any care for how other people are going to take me in. And I love that. It's almost like an unmasked person who's like, I don't have to like put up a front. I'm just going to be me, and like that's going to work for some people and not for others. And there's like that authenticity was just very, very endearing to me. So was that simple? Like, was that also kind of what grabbed you, or like what grabbed you about that character?
That was exactly it. I felt Brad had this confidence about him and the self-assuredness that I just could not, sort of look away from as I was playing, essentially. He was just I gravitated towards him. And we, I think he is you see how the dynamics of these characters play out, where I felt like, Leanne, instigator, like pushes the group forward throughout this game. Cass, they're very much like the glue and the leader that's trying to like keep everything calm, keep everything together, even in the chaos of this like initial meeting when Brad and Leanne are kind of going off the rails. Cass is like trying to bring it back in to like something a little bit more solid. And then you have Sam, who ends up coming in to the meeting after Brad. And Sam is really interesting because he's very much this loner, but there's this sort of, I don't know, philosophical air that he has. And there's just this like care. I don't know how to quite put it into words, but there's just this care that he has that the other characters don't quite have. There's almost this like softness to him
Yeah.
that I think is really compelling. And so they all balance each other really well.
I totally agree with that. And I think what's interesting is they took the most caring, or perceptually most caring, soft person, the Sam, and inserted that he has long-standing beef with
Yes.
Leanna. And this is going to be like a driving point for their two characters, is like, all we learn at this point is that there's been some sort of escalating prank war that led to the destruction of Leanna's patio.
Yeah.
I don't know. And Sam's like, well, you ruined my life, but we don't really learn much here. But it's interesting is like, you have these characters and like you expect Sam to come in to be like this, like maybe softer character. And I think my expectation was this is going to be the constant. And that's not the case. Like Cass plays maybe more the constant.
Yeah.
And because of Sam and Leanna's past, like that becomes an immediate point of conflict to drive the story forward. And while Brad is kind of this unknown element who, in his near-death experience, fought a double crow.
Yes.
And I think that statement mixed with the soundtrack, which is chef's kiss, phenomenal.
So good. Yeah.
I'm getting like strong Appalachian vibes from this game in terms of setting. And I don't know that we've explicitly said that, but I think that's kind of generally what they are wanting us to feel here.
Yes. And that's also where I kind of clocked for myself, at least what I felt like was the geography of this game. Initially I wasn't sure, because again, you got the cornfield references, so I'm like, all right, somewhere in the middle of the US. But yeah, the sort of soundtrack, which I will link in the newsletter because it is so good. I found myself listening to the soundtrack just on my
it's
own
high
time.
quality when Jenny's listening on her own time.
Yeah, it's got like, which, okay, these instruments don't sound appealing on their own, but there's like a banjo in there that's like really good, and it's sort of got this like sort of punk feel at the same time. I don't know, it's just, whoever did the soundtrack did an excellent job. But so they're all like arguing, talking over each other. I felt like the game did a really good job of conveying that too, where sometimes in games you have the like, this character says one line and then the next character waits until they're done and says their line, and there isn't a sense of actual conversational flow where people are talking over one another. I felt like this was conveyed really well.
Great point.
But they eventually, for some reason, are like, we need to elect a leader. Let's nominate and vote Cass as our leader. And even though they don't seem to want that at all, they have a newfound responsibility as leader of this Meatpunks community group. I think, what did they call themselves? The Sunset chapter of the group?
Yeah. Because that's the town they're in.
Yes.
Sunset. And it's at this point that the fash attack. So the meeting comes to an end and you get your chance to begin playing with other characters. So I did try with Cass at this point. During their nerve spike moment, you kind of start getting hints to what's going on with their background. There's kind of a sense that maybe there was like the experience that I wrote down in here is like, is there some abuse in Cass's history? Not really sure. And like, again, it's interesting. Like, I don't know if I would have even known to ask that question if I hadn't gone through the nerve spike, which I only got because Cass was the first character that I chose for this battle. and you don't get
Oh,
it when you choose different
interesting.
characters. You only get the first one. So
Yeah.
this is just another point where it's just like, man, it sounds like there's probably so much to learn about these characters where if you don't make them your first choice, you just don't know what's going on under the surface.
Yeah, as soon as I realized you kind of get your one chance sort of with each character, or there's information that you don't get. And this is a game that you can't 100%, for example, to quote, on your first playthrough,
Mm-hmm.
that you have to play multiple times to be able to see the full context of these stories. I had mixed feelings because I do appreciate and understand why that is, and I think that is great. But as someone who doesn't often replay games, I was like, I don't want information to be locked behind another playthrough.
Yeah.
But I did think that was cool. Overall, I chose Leanna
Hmm.
because she just seems so gung ho. I was like, I felt like she would have been the first to just be like, let me fight, which ended up being true. She is probably the most bloodthirsty out of all of them.
Yep.
For me, I learned that what stood out to me about her like nerve spike moment was the statement of new body, new chance to make things right. So again, alluding to something in her past, we're not quite sure what. Um, and I learned Leanna's name is Crash Queen, which is a great name.
You know what? I didn't even know that we got a drop like that, like a chance to make things right. Like that's frustrating for me to hear, to be
Mm,
honest.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Um,
So we go through the
so, oh,
battle, and you
yep.
get another very important moment where it's over and you've beaten the baddie, you learn that
Mm-hmm.
they are the son of the bad guy is the son of the sheriff, and now
Yeah.
you are officially on the run from the law. And again, as always, the tie between sheriff, cops, whatever, and whatever name you want to give them,
Mm-hmm.
and fascism, that link
Yep.
so strong. And I felt like they're saying like I don't know if it's like an apple doesn't fall far from the tree, or like a message like, hey, these things are inextricable, but you know, a cab
Yeah.
forever on this podcast.
Yep, for sure. So we are running away once again from the cops, from the fascists, and the nearest safe haven is about a week away, and it's a village called Hopeville. So these four sort of newfound, kind of unlikely friends, or not even friends for some of them, they're just kind of like, what is it? Just uh, acquaintances by convenience and by
Yeah,
situation. Almost,
found
they're stuck.
acquaintances.
Yeah, they're stuck together. They all have to make it to Hopeville just to get to safety
Mm-hmm.
and to be somewhere where that hopefully they have a little bit of a haven, wait out, or figure out just what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
um I could not, and I'm wondering if you got the same like dream sequence. So this is in blue, whereas the nerve spike sequences are in like a red tone. And I could not figure out, either I clicked too fast or something. There's like a sort of dream like narrative sequence that comes up where the phrase "the future hurts" is repeated multiple times. Did you get this sequence?
I don't know that I saw that. What I saw was a
Okay,
blue triangle with a red hexagon.
we got different things then, I
It
believe.
was
Okay.
Cass's dream for me. Whose dream did you get?
That's why I was like, I know it wasn't Cass because Cass
Okay.
woke me up. So
Okay, cool.
I
So
feel like it
again,
had to have been had to have been Sam or Leanne, I think.
I think you get I'm going to guess that you get the dream for who you chose to fight as, because I fought as Cass in
Okay.
that battle,
Okay.
which is how I learned about the abuse thing, which is why maybe I got the
Mm,
dream for them.
okay.
Um,
So that must have been Leanne then. Because yeah, there's a section where in her dream, like maybe 4 or 5 times the phrase "the future hurts" is just what you click through. um, it's really intense.
and it does, and it
Mm-hmm.
will, and it
It
shall.
does. Yep.
So our characters go off into the desert. Is this the shift to Infinite Desert Hell Zone?
Yes, this is episode 3 now. We've met our characters. We have our sort of inciting event taking us away from home. Now we are in the desert.
I gotta say, we get one of my favorite moments of the story here, which
Mm-hmm.
is Brad is talking with Cass and says like, yes X as like a gender neutral
Mm-hmm.
way of saying like yes sir and like, yes ma'am. And Cass has never heard this before, and so
Yeah.
it's just like one of those moments where like I I don't know if it was subtext or if I'm just inventing it, but it felt kind of like a like Cass's response or lack of response is kind of like a I don't know how I feel about that. But Brad is
Mm.
like trying to be like, oh, well, this is the appropriate term. And this is just what it is.
Yeah.
And like there was something about that that just felt very like authentic. Like I feel like I've observed or been a part of this conversation before where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm trying to do the right thing and this is this because that's what this means. And the other person's like, I
Yeah.
think I appreciate where this is coming from, but I don't know how I feel about that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think Brad is definitely the one to like do those kind of conversations. I think Brad is constantly bringing stuff up where everyone else is like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, I kind of love him for it. So in this episode, because each day we go into a pattern where every day you have someone take point. That is the person that you fight with. That's also the person you learn a little bit more about just narratively. um I had Brad take point
Mm.
this morning. I'm curious if who you picked.
I had Sam. I chose Sam after I realized I was going to be getting one character. I pretty much chose Sam throughout the whole rest of the game.
Oh, see, I think that's smart because I wonder if I perhaps missed out on a lot of context because I jumped around between characters every single time.
Mm.
And so things felt a little bit disjointed
Yeah.
where I was like, oh, I'm getting like a bite of every dish, but I'm not able to actually figure out the flavor palette.
Yeah. No, I
of it,
totally.
you know?
Well, honestly, even though I did that, I still had a hard time following like a cohesive
Okay.
narrative. So I don't think that's a you problem.
Okay. um for me, I guess I wanted to shout out for Ultra or for Brad's like sync point moment. The little tidbit that we learn is he has routines that are important that he has to do that help keep him grounded, and that his name is Ultra Brad, which is
I did
incredible.
love that.
Yeah.
Yes. You in story wise here make your way to a gas station that is run
Mm-hmm.
by just kind of a chill coworker that is also a cryptid or is like taking on a
Yes.
cryptid persona as they
Yeah.
work. Like I think they said their name was like Allison or something like that. I thought I wrote it down, but I
Mm-hmm.
can't find it in my notes. But basically their boss makes them become this unknowable eldritch force when they are working the front desk, the cash
Yes.
register. Is that how
Which is
is that
so
kind of
fun.
your takeaway? I thought it was a really
Yes.
interesting
I thought it
tongue-in-cheek
was
moment.
so, yeah, I thought that was really funny. I loved also the character asset for them because they had like this sort of fuzzed out face and
Yeah,
everything. I thought that was just like it looked really cool.
yeah.
Um yeah, and it's also here where because I didn't go inside, so there's a conversation I think that happens inside. There's also a conversation that happens with Brad and I believe Leanne outside, and I was outside where we met the Sun Cult
Hmm.
pastor who like came as because this is instead of a gas station. Also, I should clarify, we're at a blood station, so we're like Brad was like scooping blood into like the front of his mech, which is a
I
disgusting
missed that.
image.
Thank you for filling me in. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for joining me on that visual journey. Um, and so as Brad is like filling the mechs with blood, the Sun Cult pastor comes by, and it's this blonde, which okay, later on we learn that these characters are in their 30s. And so this character is also in ostensibly his 30s as well. He's got sort of like balding head, blonde, wearing a shirt with papyrus text. Um, just very like doesn't give the greatest vibes,
No.
honestly. And he says that he hates the sun and that he's trying to also head north and needs protection and asks to join. And Brad is like, well, I think there was a choice, and I said yes. And Brad was like, let's bring him. Let's go ask Cass if we can bring our new friend with us.
Yep.
How did you meet the sun pastor?
I was playing as Cass and Sam in the scene, so I was inside, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't meet the pastor until the next sequence because
Ooh,
basically
okay.
it's like Brad runs in and says, "Hey, I just met a youth pastor. Can they join?" So you still get the,
Yeah.
like, yes or no, but you learn nothing about them but that they are a sun cultist. So I was like, yeah, why not? Let's dig into
Why
that. I'd
not?
like to learn more about this world. um
Yeah, I was very much in a yes and, although in
yeah.
real life I would not
Nope.
bring a random sun cultist into our
I
mech
wouldn't
group,
bring a random youth
really.
pastor into my car. So
No,
yeah.
absolutely not. Um, but even with the new edition, I was nervous, but we have an uneventful night. Nothing happens. Um, the next day, I'm trying to see. Oh, this is where things I think really start heating up between two other members of the group.
Yep.
And that's Brad and Leanna, who I guess is again sort of a catalyst for a lot of these really emotional, more heated moments. Brad is really frustrated with Leanna because he is constantly being called kid. Doesn't want to be called kid. He mentions, I look young, I'm trans, I probably look like a kid to you, but I'm not. So please stop referring to me as such. And like 2 seconds later, Leanna's like, yeah, yeah, sure. Then instantly refers to him as a kid again.
It was, I'll be honest, I like that this scene happened because I think it
Mm-hmm.
brings attention to the issue, etc. I don't understand it though. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the Leanna's character motivation here feels really opaque to me. You learn that, like,
Mm-hmm.
they are taking, later on as you progress, you learn that they're kind of taking out some sort of hurt that they've experienced on Brad, but
Yeah.
I don't get it. And I, like, what was your take here? Like, I felt like this was an important point of conflict. I'm glad that it happened,
Yes.
but I feel like I didn't learn anything about the characters or the world through it happening, except for that this can happen.
Yeah, I think, and some of this is informed, I think, by later interactions we have with Leanna. Um, I think Leanna definitely has this like sort of chip on her shoulder, and I think she feels she mentions that she feels like no one is listening to her, even though she has done a lot of the work in like putting the group together and making things happen and giving like tactical feedback, but nobody listens to her. I think in some ways, kind of similar to Min from Butterfly Soup, there is a defensiveness to her and a I'm gonna I'm gonna lash first before anyone does anything so that I can be kind of like on top,
Mm-hmm.
or I can be on like the offensive instead of having to be on the defensive. So while I don't think it explains like why would she pick this fight with Brad, why would she not respect what Brad is asking, I think it kind of, as a character, she is very reactive and doesn't necessarily think through things. And so maybe for her it's not even a like maybe this is just something she does where she'll like hear something, goes out one ear, and she just does it anyway and she doesn't even think about the consequences. That's kind of the read I got
Yeah.
with her. um
I think what I struggled with is that while I understand that characterization, nothing about Leanna made me think that she would intentionally be hurtful to somebody in her community or in her group. And
right.
that was like, that didn't click for me. And I think, like, I needed more to understand, like, what was going on there.
Yeah. Well, I think because, okay, so we learn in episode 4, like in her sort of nerve synapse thing. So I'm skipping ahead a
Yeah,
little
yeah, go
bit,
ahead.
but she talks about how she knows that she's an asshole and she like gets the chance to change, but she like doesn't necessarily always take it. So I think maybe she is a little bit of an asshole. And maybe she doesn't necessarily intend it to always hurt, but she will say things, it seems like, that pick at people.
Got it.
And maybe she's just a person who kind of like knows she has the capability to do that. And maybe she's a person who has a hard time sometimes saying no when she sees that opportunity. Um, but yeah, I agree at this point. You kind of are like, why is she doing this? And I think later there's a little bit more depth given to her character, but yeah, I can see how it's a stretch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. I think a desire to be likable is not something everyone has, and something that
Mm-hmm.
I personally struggle with. So
Mm.
maybe I'm just like reading myself too much into the situation. That's very possible.
Yeah.
You also get a couple other interesting moments in the chapter 3 that I think are worth calling out here.
Mm-hmm.
You get Sam's coming out scene, where he kind of says like, I'm gay, and everyone is like, I mean, we're all queer in some way, and they like start like, there's almost like a joking around about this in that
Mm-hmm.
experience that was like, I
Mm-hmm.
thought it was kind of a funny little like heartwarming moment. Like it felt like a step towards found family to me. Like that felt like an ice breaking moment. um
Yeah.
did you have
Yeah.
did you have that too?
Yeah, I think I had that in episode 4, so I think maybe I had just maybe because I didn't interact with Sam as much or play
Oh,
as him
interesting.
as much. But yeah, I had that a little bit later, but yes, I thought that was a really funny moment because they're all kind of like, yeah. I think Leanna actually just like laughs at him
Yes.
for a little bit because she thinks he's joking by like coming out so seriously in this moment. You know, he's like, I have something to say. So yeah, I also agree that was a really funny moment.
Cool. What else did you capture in Act 3 or Part 3?
I think that was pretty much part 3 for me. I don't think
Hmm.
there was anything else. It was just the sun cultist pastor and the argument were like the really big two things.
Yeah. So you at the beginning of every day or at the end of every day, kind of hard to tell. You get kind of a mech battle sequence. This is what like ultimately got a little frustrating, repetitive for me. But that is like as you're crossing the desert, which is kind of this whole sequence. That's the thing. Like it's going to take you about a week to cross the desert. So you go to bed, you wake up, you fight some baddies. There's a little drama.
Mhm.
Repeat. And it's
Mhm.
kind of the interstitials where you start seeing relationships develop, and I really liked this.
Mhm.
You get this kind of like, for me there's this whole subplot where Sam has a crush on Brad, and it's kind of like, how is Sam going to tell him? Is he going to tell him?
Mm,
And like I thought that
mhm.
was a very cute thing, like he's asking for advice from Cass. You also get weird things with the youth pastor guy, like he's eating sand, he disappears at random times, like I don't know what's going on there. You get concerns about doppelgangers, a classic cryptic archetype. So I don't know. A lot is happening, but also very little is happening. So like, what was your experience through this whole
Mhm.
sequence?
Yeah, so episode 4, let's see. I think again well, we have the battle between Brad and Leanna, which I think was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I picked Leanna
Oh,
because
I chose
I
Brad.
don't know. I thought I think she for me was more personally interesting. Um, and I was hoping to get some insight, which is where we got the insight of how she's like full of anger and hurt. She's lashing out. She knows she's an asshole. She sees the chance to change, yet she just keeps going on the path that she's on. So again, we see her as this really cool character, but also really flawed character, because she does have that one track sort of mind. The fight was interesting because they had a whole arc of whoever loses needs to like leave into the desert, never to be heard from again. Did you have that as well?
I don't think so.
Because I was like, why are they being so dramatic about this? Because they had the fight and they were like, whoever loses needs to leave the group. I was like, and Cass is the same. They're just like, why are you doing this? But you know, Brad and Leanna are kind of in
Huh.
their own, you know, they're running with their own ideas. And so at least when with my playthrough, Leanna won. But eventually she was like, okay, but you, Brad, I've never seen this fire in you before, so you can stay. And
Hmm.
so, you know, the group remains unchanged. But that was really funny to me that they took the time to fight each other like that.
I got my clock cleaned. I played as Brad and I tried so hard. I think I won one round and I just got
Yeah. Oh
absolutely
no.
demolished. And I was like, I want Brad to win this. I was really
Yeah.
frustrated. I was like, I should have played Leanna and just died on purpose over and over again. Oh man.
um, I also, while I thought the Sam has a crush on Brad arc charming, I actually felt similarly where I was like, I don't as we did with Jason and Sam in the beginning,
Mm.
where I did not see what necessarily attracted Sam to Brad, and later on they fill it in, so I was kind of more okay with it later, but especially at this point, I felt like this felt a little bit out of left field.
Well,
I
again,
was
I think it's
confused
like
about it.
even the character dynamics and storytelling, this is my criticism. It's like
Yeah.
very little happens and a lot happens. And so it's just like
Yes.
I could have used way more time with the characters and way less time killing myself by jumping off cliffs in the mech suits.
Right, right. Sam had an encounter, and I'm curious if you had it with Sam or maybe a different character, where there's this strange man in sort of this gray suit, not a fash, but like a almost, you're like, not a mech, not a fash, just like this strange man. He asks Sam about thunder and if Sam still hears the thunder, and Sam says yes. And then the strange man asks, and this man has like a mask. You don't see a face. It just looks like almost like an alien. There's a person in an alien suit almost. And then he says, I said, well, you hear thunder with rain. And then he asked me, what does the rain feel like? And I said, healing. And then this strange man said, disappointing. I guess there is some hope in the world. And then he was just like, we're going to have to test you later, I guess, and leaves. And so that was my interaction for one of the days that normally would have been a battle. Did you get this at all?
Something about this sounds familiar, but I have no memory of this and no notes about it. But like
So
the
funny.
idea of thunder does sound familiar to me, and but I don't remember what the context was for it.
Yeah, it crops up one more time in the very last episode, so maybe that's where you also heard it. Yeah. And then another event for episode 4, yeah, Ed, the pastor, he's like eating sand. That's just bizarre.
Day and night
The
swap
doppelganger
places at some point.
Yes, yeah. Are you talking about like the flashing sort of?
Yeah, they say like day and night have swapped. It has something to do with like the pastor and the son or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a conversation about doppelgangers, which I really liked this part. This was a cute moment.
Yeah. Who did you go to with it, or who had a doppelganger in your playthrough?
Oh, none of them ended up having a doppelganger.
Oh, Cass had a doppelganger for me. Like Cass was out in the desert, and instead of a battle, we encountered Cass.
Weird. No,
Yeah.
like, well, you know what? That might have been a battle that I skipped, and so I didn't see that, and I just saw the conversation about doppelgangers afterwards. Maybe that's
okay. Yeah, maybe, because there wasn't. Yeah, it was like one of those times where you go into the desert and there isn't like combat. There was just like the scene with the doppelganger, and I thought that was really fascinating because where are my notes for that? Basically, the doppelganger's like, I'm here to take your life, and swap places with you. Cass is like, I don't really like my life. I don't think you should find someone better.
Brutal.
And the doppelganger ultimately sort of gives Cass the advice to like talk to other people and trust in other people in their group. And then the doppelganger leaves. And what's interesting is Cass goes back and everyone's like, hey, well, how was, going out into the desert? Anything weird? And Cass didn't say anything. And so I'm just there like, Cass, excuse me, your doppelganger just told you to trust in these people and you're not communicating with them, but that's fine. Growth comes in baby steps. So maybe a baby step will come later. They had Tumblr reference, crave that mineral meme. So that made me laugh. And then, yeah, Ed says it is time. And we just know we have to watch for the sun, which I don't think we've mentioned this yet, but the light in the sky is not the sun. We also know this. It is the bright, which is different than the sun.
I feel like I didn't learn that until the very end of the game, like when they're in Hopeville. Did you learn that earlier?
I think we learned that. Actually, technically, we learned that. End of episode 4, early episode 5.
So maybe it was about
somewhere in there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's it for episode 4 for me.
Do you get Brad's name in chapter 4 or chapter 5? Like the full name, what's going on? Okay, so there's a thing where you learn that Brad grew up in the Sun cult, and as a part of a conversation. Oh, this is, I think, the like romance conversation with Brad or with
Okay.
Sam. I think that's why this happened. In this conversation, Brad says that his chosen name is Bradley Fighting Vehicular Danger Ultra Brad. And
That's
now that I
funny.
know that the name is the thing, that's why he screams Ultra Brad is a part of his like magic girl
Yeah.
transformation. But there's a whole conversation about the importance of names there that I thought was really well done. And so, yeah, if you choose to romance Sam and Brad, that is a conversation you get.
That's cool. I like that. Instead, I think my conversation was between Brad and Leanna. They co-tell a story. I don't know if this is maybe you also got this as well, where they co-tell a story about cryptids essentially, where they both tell their version of it kind of simultaneously for over 4 hours.
Okay.
Sounds like a horrible time. Everyone else falls asleep. But you get this really lovely moment where while everyone else is asleep, Brad's like, all right, I guess we should go to bed. Leanna takes the time to apologize again. And so I think this for me was a nice moment for Leanna, showing just like not perfection, but movement towards progress, which is always a good thing. And then that's when episode 5 begins.
I did get a patch up conversation between Sam and Liana, where they essentially decide that they're not going to be friends because that would be forced. So instead, they're going to be rivals. It felt like a big like anime
That's great. Yeah.
shout out in that moment.
Yeah.
But I did really
I
like
love
that.
that.
That was good. So we get to last legs and meet. This is where I have us getting to Hopeville. Is that also where you have us in the notes?
Yes. And it begins with something wrong with the bright. And so I'm like, for sure we know about the fact that this isn't the sun now, because this episode kicks off with the sky like flashing on and off, like a light going on and off. Ed has left a note written in his blood for some reason, because he didn't have a pen is why he said it, so I guess he has a reason, that he's like going off to investigate that. But yeah, they're one day away basically from Hopeville. This is going to be the final push to try and get to safety, and they just need to like hunker down and basically hang on until they get to Hopeville. For me, there's a reinforcement. I picked Sam as like the first point leader for the first half of the day. He says something like, as soon as you trust people, because he's like on the high of, getting to like get closer with Brad. He says, as soon as you trust people, it looks like you can't trust nature. And then Astra flashes with him. Did you get this word Astra?
I had
in his nerve
Astra
spike?
be part of the Cass. Flash.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, I got that with Sam. So yeah, it's probably just like making sure we get that word through one of our choices at some point. Leanna talks to Brad about Sam's kind of like hiding something, feeling like Sam's not fully communicating. And then I had Sam talking to Brad, basically like, I want to get to know you better. And we have this like cute conversation where they ask each other 3 questions just to like get to know each other, and they learn sort of fun facts about one another.
That's when I got the name part. So that I skipped ahead of it. Okay. Yeah, that's when I learned more about the name.
Got it.
Yeah,
okay.
Now we're tracking.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I guess that was the first half of the day. Before we go into that second half, anything different for you?
No, that all tracks.
That all tracks? Okay. I think I had Leanna take point next. This one was the most interesting for me, and also I would say the most like, this is where I wished we had more opportunity, because Leanna explicitly talks about how she hasn't seen her mom in years. She also talks about she hasn't seen her because she ran away from home. There's no use regretting the past, but she hopes her mom is proud of her for fighting the Fash. And they're getting a little bit close to the logging town that she used to live. Maybe she has the opportunity to visit her mom after going to Hopeville.
Whoa.
And I'm like, this is huge. This is the most we've gotten, and the most I have been specifically interested in a character arc this whole time.
That is my complaint, but yes, I agree. I didn't get that. I don't know what I got. I think I got a conversation about wave jacking in this part of the conversation. So I don't know that I got anything as meaningful as that in my playthrough.
Yeah.
Uh, at this point, I
Um,
have us meeting the owl punk. Is that
yes, I think right before that, there was a moment that I got where the narrator essentially interjected and said, "Hey, there is a conversation that's going to happen. You can choose one that goes right and choose
mm,
one that goes wrong. If you choose the one that goes wrong, know that it goes like to a heavier place.
hmm
So just be prepared for that." I just wanted to shout out that I thought that was really cool of the game to like have the in the moment, hey, this is going to be a heavier thing if you pick this. So like,
Yep.
just be careful, be aware of yourself kind of moment. I thought that was great. And that is where we learned specifically about Cass and how the night that they ran away from the cops from the church community center, they were actually going to attempt to kill themselves that evening.
Man.
And they said that, you know, going on this journey has forced them to delay, you know, they were like, we can't do that because now we have this responsibility to all of you. Um, and that was something that I was like, oh my gosh. And I wish, because you said you got a lot of details that alluded to some of this in your like earlier sort of mind spikes with
I
Cass.
got like that there were things that happened in their past. I did not learn what they were because I spent more
Oh,
time as
okay.
Sam after that. I chose the
Ah, gotcha.
happier conversation, which is where I got the patch up
Mm.
between Leanna and Sam and the we're going to be rivals now thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
no, this is all news to me.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, so definitely dropped like a really heavy narrative. No, they weren't kidding, the dev, when they said that was a heavier one. Um, but they also then, because who was Cass talking to? I forget who Cass was talking to, but the person they were talking to said, "Well, why are you bringing this up now? Like, what's the point in telling me this?" And Cass then said, "Well, I made a promise to someone." And I was like, this is the reference to the doppelganger conversation that happened.
Uh,
So for me, that was like a nice Cass arc kind of closure that ended up happening, at least in terms of Cass's past and like what brought them to this place and sort of what's going on with them a little bit more.
so, unless you choose the same character beginning to end, you barely get opening and you barely get closure for each character.
Yeah, I think that's probably, I think that would be my feedback to someone playing through is maybe follow, like, I guess play however you want, but follow a through line in terms of the character because that'll allow you to like see some of the detail more consistently.
Yeah.
Or if you don't mind replaying, then hop around because that's kind of fun to get the little Easter eggs, I guess.
Yeah. As at this point, I have us getting to Hopeville, and
Mm-hmm.
you meet up with the punks there,
Yes.
Emmy, Moss, and June, and
Mm-hmm.
I felt like these characters were very, very cool. They've been fighting on their own battle here in Hopeville,
Yep.
and you get the opportunity to join forces. I had a really cool moment where Sam secretly unveils that he can sign to
Yes.
Moss,
Yep.
who also signs, and essentially, like, it felt like you get kind of a really fast interaction between the two groups before, like, the big bad evil guy is on top of a mountain with a crumbling reality and you're going to have to go fight him.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, what was your
Yes.
experience like from getting from point A to point B on that?
Yeah, I think what was most, I don't know, what sort of put me on alert starting this episode, which is entitled Hope, just put that out there, is the narrator before the episode begins basically says, I don't know how to say this. I wish, I wish I could say that everything was going to be okay, but I am so sorry. This was heartbreaking for me. I'm apologizing in advance. And I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Where the narrator interjects beforehand a chapter titled Hope, and then it says, and they say, actually, be ready, like prepare yourself.
I think they say something like, this didn't go where I expected it to go, or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And I'll be honest, that bothered me quite a bit. Because the
Mm.
fact this game released episodically and the way that this chapter ends kind of heightens my perspective that this is an incomplete season. And like
Mm-hmm.
the idea that this chapter ends how it ends, and it starts off by the narrator telling us that this was not how they intended the story to end, just makes me feel like we're getting an arbitrary endpoint to this season rather than a cohesive story. And like, maybe that's overly harsh, but like, that was
Mm-hmm.
my gut feeling when I read that narrator note, is like,
Yeah.
wait, but you have control over this. Like, did you just decide that you now know you want to do a second season, and so you decided to end it differently so you can get to the second season? Like, it just felt, as a
Mm.
person who's very into story, it felt bad. It felt bad to me.
See, I did not feel that way. I think for me, it felt more of, okay. And I think maybe I'm also being more gracious because this is a game made, I think, by like 2 or 3 people. It was released episodically as like sort of a personal project, self-funded. Like it's on itch.io. It's not even on Steam. It's a very, very indie game. And so part of me wondered, whereas in the development of this game, they had planned out this arc. And as they were writing it, as they were editing it, releasing it, looking at feedback, and also perhaps seeing what was going on in the world, realized that the game maybe couldn't have the ending that they would have wanted. Like maybe they wanted to give them a closure and a happy ending, and like maybe in the process of releasing something and seeing it out in the world, realized they had to change it. And so for me, I felt, while I did not think it was satisfying, and I wished maybe we didn't have to have that, I was much more kind of open to be like, you know what, this feels very real to me and authentic, where you're like, oh shit, I really wish I could give them a happy ending, but I actually don't think I can. And I don't know if they originally planned for a season 2, but I feel like it's almost really brave of them, if they didn't originally plan a
Mm.
season 2, to say like, actually we need to not do it this way, we need to do it this other way.
I
So
don't think I need a happy ending. I just needed an ending. Like, this was like, I didn't
mm-hmm.
feel like I got a complete arc for
mm,
anyone or anything in this part
mm.
of the game. And so it's like, well,
Yeah.
you're choosing to end it like this. Like, you don't have to. You could end it differently. We could get a
Yeah, for
complete
sure.
something. um
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, so let's dive in. You get to the top, and I guess this is where I now know that I see this, the gray suit person. Is that who you see at the top of the mountain?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. I was like, I know I saw a gray suit person, but
So did you not see them at all on your journey elsewhere?
no, not
Oh,
at
that's
all.
so weird. Okay. Yeah.
Basically, you get up top, and they're like, "Hey, I'm about to bring back the sun. It's going to destroy everything the light touches. There's nothing you can do to stop this. It just is going to happen, and the world's going to be forever changed." I tried to battle. I had a black screen every time I went to fight for
Oh
every round. And so
no.
I literally just had to like, and I even restarted, like I had to try it again, and like
Dang.
it just got black screen. So I just ended up holding my arrow key to the left, assuming the cliffs would be there until my character died.
Right. Oh, that's
And then
unfortunate.
it gave me back to the story again.
Dang.
Um,
Oh.
so I guess my first question is this a winnable fight? Did you fight? What happens?
I did fight. I don't think it's a winnable fight.
Okay, good to know.
I did not win. Um, and I think one additional note I wanted to make is that this person, whoever they are, is not acting alone, and they're not even necessarily acting out of their own like interest. They are working for, they say, a man with a lot of money
Yeah.
is having me do this.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm like, all right, this is like, you think your final boss is this, you think your final boss is Team Rocket, it's actually, Giovanni over here. It's like there's a different higher power at play. And so like that for me was really interesting, because I think the whole time I didn't even think this guy was a boss. I thought he was just sort of a weird encounter that we had in the desert. And so I think that was what got me, where I was like, all right, we have the beginnings of this like bigger plot to destroy the world emerging in what originally was a run to safety, like find safety journey with your found family kind of thing.
Yes.
Which again, I was kind of okay with it.
I was not.
I did not mind that at
It
all.
felt like, because I had never seen this dude before. Like, I have no context for who this
Right.
person is. I
That's
show up,
fair,
I'm
because you did
like,
not see
okay, well,
him.
I guess this is the bad guy that I'm going to be fighting now. And
Hmm.
then it's like, oh no, there's a whole nother organization that's trying to bring about the end of the world. It's like, well, I didn't know the end of the world was even on the table. Like,
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
happening? And it just felt like, it just felt like we're
Hmm.
inserting this. To me, it felt like we're inserting this chapter so that we can have a second season.
Hmm.
And it just, to me, lacked cohesion and coherence, maybe.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I think exceptionally so because you didn't even see him before. I think for me, seeing him again, he had already asked me about like
Sure.
this idea of hope and whether or not he has to test me. And so, like, seeing him again, even though I didn't think he was a boss, and I felt like that was a bit of a leap for me, I at least had context of like, okay, this dude had already been asking me about if I had hope in the world. And he was disappointed that I did. So that's a kind
Okay.
of a
Yeah.
villainous thing to say.
Great.
Um, but yeah, to not see him and then have him come up and do all this is very like, oh, what?
Yeah. I don't know. I was kind of expecting it to be like the sheriff or something, because that's the only villain that I had any context
Mm,
for.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I died, and you see a really gorgeous illustration of Hopeville
Yeah.
blowing up. I'm assuming it was just Hopeville because it was like a single mushroom cloud, but I kind of got the impression that like the whole world was experiencing something. I don't know what your take on
Yeah.
that was.
I also couldn't quite understand because at first I was like, is this a explosion like a bomb has gone off? And then I thought maybe something about the sky had opened up where the sun was shining down specifically on Hopeville because they talk about a pillar of flame. And I'm like, is this pillar because the ray of sunlight hit Hopeville? I wasn't entirely clear about that.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a question for me. Um, but essentially, the whole world has not ended yet, but Hopeville has been absolutely annihilated,
Mhm.
Which is devastating to the Hopeville Meatpunks, who we just met, who basically are kind of like, y'all didn't do what you said you would, and you didn't stop this, and they were very frustrated with us, which I felt was a little bit
It
harsh.
came out of
So I'm like,
nowhere.
what could we have done to stop this?
Yeah, that felt heavy-handed to me, and I didn't
Yeah,
understand I didn't understand why they didn't come with us. I didn't understand why they weren't a
yeah,
part of the battle. I didn't understand why they chose to pin the destruction of this thing on us. Like, all of that felt very forced to me. I just didn't get it.
yeah, agreed. I was kind of like, why are you blaming us when we have actually, like, we stepped in to help you and we did our best. And I know you're devastated because your whole families and lives are gone, but like, we're not the enemy here. And why did you jump to us being
Mm-hmm.
the enemy? And there are a couple of lines after that. I actually just did, I only wrote two other lines. Um, Basically you and your group kind of start like, I think, are fleeing the scene, are like trying to figure out what are the next steps for you to do, and they say fear is an emotion you feel only if you have something new to lose. That was one of the lines I wrote down, especially interesting considering Cass and their lack of sort of fear throughout the game. They mentioned not feeling fear,
Since
not really feeling much of
2016.
anything. Hmm.
Yeah.
And then the last, or one of the last sentences, saying this is only the beginning.
Yeah.
Which,
Something about
now
them
there's a
going to
season two.
find blood masons to get help. And like in the
Yes.
season 2 preview, I guess you would call it, they talk about like
Hmm.
you're going to re-encounter old enemies and old friends. And I was like, so I guess that means we're going to see the Hopeville meat punks again. But like, I don't understand. I don't get
Yeah, I
it.
was like, the meat punks and then maybe like the sheriffs. I'm like, the cops have to come back somehow, I feel like.
Where's the gas station attendant? Or the
That would be
yeah.
cool. But I don't know. I feel like, okay, even though there are gaps and incomplete lots of things, I feel like I was still able to go on this ride, generally understand what was going on, still care for the characters and what they were trying to do. And it's like a bit brute force and a bit like, what is it? Hammer on the nail. Like, it's very blunt in what
Yeah,
it's trying
sure.
to say and trying to do, but that roughness and rawness and everything, I ultimately contributed to being part of its charm. And I feel like ultimately that's what made me feel, I think, higher up on this game than you.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
I think like ultimately I could see why other people would really enjoy this. It just wasn't one for me, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's right. I did find like a lot of the characters really compelling. I found their relationship dynamics really interesting. I just wanted way more of that. So
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the notes that I did write that had nothing to do with the game itself directly, um, was I would love to see this game made now or almost like a season 3. Simply, I don't know. I haven't played season 2, so I don't know what season 2 entails, but I think what was really interesting and good in some ways were that the Fash were very like disconnected from any sort of sense of real person.
mhm.
And you're kind of like, yeah, these are just internet trolls. You don't give them the time of
I
day.
love
You
that.
don't acknowledge them. What I would love to see, which is a different purpose, maybe different level of complexity certainly, but like what happens if the Fash aren't just the trolls, but like people who you had relationships with
Oof.
or people you know. I think especially now playing the game, um, that's just something I think of. You
Yeah.
know, there are people that I care about who are very much different values. We'll just put it put it like that. People who I know and care about who just don't agree or see eye to eye on things that I think are really basic things. And what happens, you know, when, because I can't see those people as those internet trolls simply because of the proximity I have
Yep.
to them. And so I would love to see what this game could do with a little bit more of that, even though I know or I feel like that's not the purpose of this game. So maybe they did so intentionally, but that was just something I thought when I finished
Yeah.
that would be cool to explore.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And I think in general, community is the theme that this game was the strongest with and that I think has the
Mm-hmm.
most potential to explore going forward.
Definitely. And I think, honestly, if I were to engage with this world again, I would most recommend the TTRPG. I had picked up it's like $25 on itch, I think, as
Hmm.
of this recording. And looking through some of the world building in there, that really fleshed it out for me. And I think if you are a TTRPG enjoyer, that's something that you could probably check out and maybe have fun with if you also enjoyed the story and like the world itself of this game.
Cool.
So for next week, unless did you have anything
Nope.
else you wanted to share on this one? Cool. For next week, we are playing Serre, and that is a very short game. I think, gosh, playing it took me maybe an hour, and that's because I was like recording and pausing maybe in between. Is a very, very short game. It's the shortest of all 3 or 4 of the games we've been playing. That one is on Steam. It's not on itch.io as far as I know of. So you can check that out by insert disc 5. And then we will have 2 weeks off for the first 2 weeks of July. And then we'll be playing chapter 3 of Deltarune and then chapter 4 of Deltarune in July. So if you would like to get a head start, I'll try to also prep all of the materials ahead of time. So that way, even in the 2 week break, if you'd like to get started and start talking, that will all be ready for you.
Thanks so much, as always, for joining us for Geeks and Grounds. Love having your commentary. Let us know about your Steam NextFest experience. Let us know about your thoughts on the Meat Punks. Let us know about what your thoughts are on the state of the world right now. Really enjoy having this community, and I think that is, as always, the strength of us. So thanks so much. May you find a group of people that you can blow up Hopeville with?
Or maybe just like fight fascists with.
Oh,
That's a
that's a
little bit
better
better.
one.
Yeah.
Fight fascists with. That's good. All right. Bye.
Bye, y'all.